Welcome on into the Utah Blockcast. I'm Steve Bartle, Utah Insider for KSL Sports. Good to be with you on a Tuesday, man. It's been a crazy couple of days. We talked about it on the last episode that Ben and I did, recording Sunday night. That was pretty wild. That night, it feels like forever ago. But here we are, Tuesday, December 2nd, and what do you know? It is early signing period opening up tomorrow. And so on this episode, going to preview Utah's potential signing day and what that could look like. Obviously, Utah coming off a 10-2 season and, feeling good about where things are at moving forward. So plenty to discuss on the recruiting trail for Utah. Obviously, I know with it being the end of the season, there's a lot going on. The coaching carousel was in full swing here in the state, and a lot of drama, a lot of craziness, a lot of phone calls and a lot of texts over the last 48 hours. It's been wild, but Utah just continuing to operate as business as usual, and we'll see what that leads to this month. In terms of bowl game preparation, sounds like Utah's going to get that going here soon. They had a meeting Monday afternoon to discuss the schedule and likely bowl game destination. The more I hear, the more I'm leaning towards a trip to Vegas is what we'll be looking at. So we'll see on that. And I think decent chance at a solid matchup there in the Vegas Bowl, December 31st. So we'll wait on that. But on this episode, again, going to preview Utah signing day 2026, the class of 2026, putting pen to paper and making it official on Wednesday, December 3rd. So going to run through this real quick. As quick as I can. Obviously, you guys know I talk and we'll get long-winded on some things, but let's dive into this. And, with this, I think it'll be pretty interesting this year because we have seen some, recruiting calendar changes, obviously with signing day moving up to the first week or the first Wednesday of December. It used to be middle of the month, the early signing period, where, you'd get to the second, I think right around the 12th, 15th, somewhere in there is when the early signing period was initially slated. But now it's been moved up to the first Wednesday of December. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's going to help teams, obviously put the finishing touches on their recruiting efforts for the 2026 recruiting cycle. And it's going to allow them to then move forward with, the focus entirely on the transfer portal. And I think with Utah, that's going to be the mindset that they take forward, after tomorrow. And, it is important to note that the signing period is not just tomorrow. It is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So players will have those 3 days to finalize decisions. Obviously, we know that as we get to the final stretch and the finish line, that things can get crazy. And we've seen it. If you're on Twitter or you're on Instagram and you follow recruiting, you're seeing it, throughout the country that, it's flip season. And so some things can certainly happen that change things. And, over these next couple of days, we'll likely see some pressure potentially, and maybe some good news, maybe some bad news, who knows, but that's what we'll see. So with Utah, obviously with their class, not the biggest class, 16 commits currently. The class checks in, depending on where you look, mid 30s, mid 40s, based on the total class. But based on average rating, they actually rank much higher. They rank in the top 30, bordering top 25 status based on their average rating, which, is really good. That's what you want. So it's about quality, not quantity this cycle. And obviously we know that Utah's got some headliners in this class that really do a lot to boost that average rating. So, with the class, and it looks like most players are going to be signing tomorrow. Kelvin Obot going to be signing 7:30 p.m. there in Fruitland. A couple other guys are going to be having their signing day announcements throughout the day, earlier in the day, obviously. But that's what we can expect tomorrow on Wednesday is, most players putting it, pen to paper, if not all players putting pen to paper tomorrow. So that's what we'll look for then, and with the class coming um, to the finish line, Utah is then going to shift their attention to the transfer portal. And I think this is a great opportunity for Utah to make some noise. Obviously, we saw what Utah did last year, needing to completely revamp the offensive side of the ball with the turnover that they experienced. And we saw that Utah came out with a pretty net positive in the transfer portal. Obviously, some tough losses, some emotionally charged losses, but I think when you look at it at the end of the day, you weigh out the pluses, you weigh out the minuses, and how guys fared at their potentially new schools. Talking to the guys that left the program last year, I think Utah came out on the positive side of things. They brought in some players that fit their culture, fit their scheme, and it took some time, but a lot of players developed over the course of the season and really started to hit their stride in the final month. So I think Utah came out on the positive side of the transfer portal last year. And given what last year was, a 5-7 record, and obviously the turnover on the offensive side of the ball with Andy Ludwig being let go or retiring. I forget what that is officially, but he was gone. Utah had to make a change at offensive coordinator, and a number of other changes on the offensive side of the ball. So Utah had to turn the page and still brought in a pretty solid class that led to a 10-2 season this year. And I think a lot of things that Utah can build on moving forward and capitalize on as we get into the transfer portal. So we're going to see, the shift move from the recruiting class, from the high school prospect level to the transfer portal. And I think that's going to become the big focal point for Utah the rest of the offseason. And, I think that's a good thing, because when you look at this roster, the makeup of this roster, there is a lot of youth on the roster currently, and keeping this group together, I think, is good, while sprinkling in some good transfer portal additions, guys with experience, guys that can come in and step into roles right away. I think that'll go a long way towards, building out the roster and building a contender again in 2026. So with all of that said, let's go ahead, let's dive into this class and talk about some of the players in this class, guys that I like, some superlatives, and all that sort of stuff. So let's dive into the headliners of the class. And obviously the headliner in Utah's 2026 class is 5-star tackle from Fruitland, Idaho, Kelvin Obot, just a man amongst boys at the high school level. Utah landed his commitment, beating out Michigan, Oregon, and Nebraska, who made up his top 4. He committed over the summer, and this was the big win for Utah. He was a 4-star prospect at the time, and Kelvin Obot was considered by many to be, I don't want to say a bit of a project, because it's hard to be considered a project when you're a 4-star prospect, but he needed some work. Very good athlete. He's a track athlete as well, and you see it in his film, how powerful and explosive he can be. He's big in the shot put on the track and field, and that translates in his game on the field. So to land him, it was a big recruiting win, and it's only gotten better as time has gone on, because in his senior film, man, you just see an absolute monster. Kelvin has been just dominant. And let me get this going here. We'll get his film going here. But man, he is a lot of fun to watch. He's added weight. So he's now 6'5", about 285 pounds, still moves extremely well. I think given his size, being 285, and watching him with the general mobility that he has, the effortlessness in which he moves around, and then the power, just the easy dominant power that he displays, this is a guy that I think can come in right away and compete, not just compete, but should be viewed as, you know, a potential like favorite to win a starting job in year one. I think he's got tremendous potential first and foremost, but from his junior film to his senior film, he's made big strides. And I think it's important to keep in mind who his head coach is at Fruitland High School. It's none other than Utah offensive tackle legend Jordan Gross. And you can see how his coaching, his teaching has benefited Obot in terms of how he plays the game now. So really excited about Obot. I think this is the biggest win for Utah, and I think it's going to be this is the big one for Utah for sure. All right, let's get to the next headliner. Matali Benjamin out of Lehigh, 4-star prospect. This was a big one for Utah. Originally, he committed to Minnesota during the summer, and he was a top prospect at the time for Utah. Was one of the top targets at the offensive tackle position, and when he committed to Minnesota, it seemed like that was going to be a tough one to flip, but Utah stayed committed with him. Matali has been a longtime target for Jim Harding. Utah's developed a really good relationship with him over the last couple of years, and they stuck with it. And as we got into September and October, Utah really started to gain momentum on the recruiting front with Matali, and ultimately he decommitted from Minnesota about midway through the season, and you can hear Miles chiming in. Matali, is that Matali? And yeah, so Utah eventually landed his commitment, in the month of November, and following his senior season, Benjamin really showed a lot of progress, really improved quite a bit, and was rewarded by 24/7 Sports with a new 4-star rating and a top 200 ranking in their top 247 ranking. So big ups to Mr. Benjamin for the improvement he made. And, with his game, there's a lot to like here. And when you look at what he was able to do this season, obviously with Lehigh, just a big body at 6'7" and about 300 pounds now, and he's got to fill out, he's got to develop physically, he's got to get stronger, and all of those sort of things. But there's a lot to like here, just given his natural frame, his athleticism, how well he moves, and just his overall potential. Obviously, the fundamentals, you like what you see here. He's able to move. He's able to get out in space for being such a tall, lanky guy. He is able to sit in his stance a little bit, and that's a good thing. That's going to allow him to, anchor against power. He's good. He's got good mobility to get out into space, and his length is really just a weapon for him. He's able to latch on to defenders before they are able to get into his body, and that's going to be a big asset for him as he moves into the college level. So for him, obviously, it's going to take a little bit of development physically to get stronger and all that sort of stuff, but you have to really like what Utah's done here along the offensive line, landing Obot and then flipping Benjamin and having 2 premier tackles in the 2026 class. Next headliner, in my opinion, LaMarcus Bell, running back out of Oregon. Utah had to fend off the Oregon Ducks to hang on to Bell's commitment, and so this is a big one. And obviously, he's only rated a 3-star prospect, which is crazy. But Bell is a tremendous running back prospect. Obviously, a borderline 4-star prospect based on, from a couple of different sources, 24/7 and on 3. But this is a guy that when you watch him, it's easy to make a comparison to a recent Utah running back. Wore the same number 2, similar build, similar athletic qualities, Mekhi Bernard. That's what I see when I watch LaMarcus Bell. And let's pull up some of his film, just to kind of watch him and what he's able to do, what he was able to do this past season as a senior at Lake Oswego. Just ultimately super productive, right? Over 1,600 yards, I think he finished close to 2,000 yards, number of touchdowns. Only 32 of 52 quarters played this season and putting up monster numbers all year long. But again, you see just the athleticism, the ability to get to the edge, the ability to run inside, break it outside. These are the types of things that we watched Mekhi Bernard do over the course of his career at Utah. And I think Bell can come in and fill a similar role that that Bernard played. As as Bernard kind of worked his way up the production list over the course of his career. Mekhi, I think it's important to understand he was, 17-year-old when he joined the program, so he was a year younger than everybody else. Bell's going to come in a little bit more prepared and ready to go, and I think this is the type of kid that could potentially earn some reps next season. I think he's got a lot of potential, and I'm really excited to see what he's able to do in a Utah uniform. So this is a kid that, again, can do a little bit of everything. He can run inside, run outside. He can catch the ball. He's going to be a factor in both phases, run and pass. And I think this is a big-time win for Utah to hang on to Bell because, again, Oregon honed in on him, as a running back target. And Oregon typically gets the guy that they want on the recruiting trail. So for Utah to fend off the Ducks, this was pretty big, especially given the fact that Oregon is in the backyard there in Lake Oswego. So big win for Utah to hang on to Bell. They add another dynamic running back to that room, and I think this is a big one for Utah. All right, let's transition away from some of the headliners and talk some of the storylines for Utah. And obviously that starts with the Pula twins. They've been committed to Utah since the summer. After flipping from UCLA, Utah was able to land them after an official visit in June and ultimately landing their commitment in July. Micah Simon deserves a lot of credit for landing their commitment, and he's built a really strong relationship with the twins, and Utah's done a lot to strengthen their relationship with mom and the family and that sort of thing. When they committed, they knew that this was a recruitment that was going to go the distance, and it was going to come down to the finish line. And so as we approach the finish line, Utah is still optimistic that they're going to remain committed and sign with the program. But obviously we know that BYU has been in hot pursuit. We know that Colorado has been in the mix. So there's a decent chance that these guys do end up flipping. But Utah, again, they've built a strong relationship with the twins. They've recruited them to be contributors next year. And I think that'll go a long way for Utah. So obviously having a 10-win season, that goes a long way as well. So we'll see tomorrow what happens with the twins, but I think that's going to be the big storyline of the day for Utah and within the state as well. One other storyline to follow on Wednesday is a potential flip candidate for Utah. Can't share his name, but I know Utah's been putting in some work on a target, and I know that things are coming down to the wire, and I had some conversations recently and feel like Utah is trending positively. Is it going to be enough to make the flip happen? We'll see. But I know that things have been trending in the right direction for Utah, and I know that he's a big focal point and a big priority for Utah as we hit the final stretch, the final couple hours before signing day tomorrow. So we'll see on that. But those are the two big storylines for Utah fans: is the Pula twins, and then also a potential flip candidate of their own. So we'll see on that. And then just to finish this up, let's wrap this thing up. I think this is going to be, this isn't the biggest class with 16 commits, which could potentially grow, but Utah hit on a lot of the necessities that they needed to this cycle. They obviously addressed the offensive line with Obot, Benjamin, Moses Sparks, and Rowdy Pierce, who I think, those two, with Obot and Benjamin, the talent, the potential is obvious. With Sparks and Pierce, those are the type of guys that you bring into the program. They stick around for 3-4 years. They're developmental guys and program guys that I think Harding has really kind of built this offensive line, upon those types of guys. So I feel like those are quality additions as well. The guy that I'm really excited for that doesn't probably get the recognition he deserves is Isa Nyalie out of Orem, the defensive back. He does it all. He can play corner. He can play safety. I think he's going to be a fantastic fit for Utah. You watch him, and he just has those natural playmaking instincts. He has the ability to make plays in a number of different ways. He's physical, he's athletic, he has ball skills. So I think he's going to be the guy they told you not to worry about in the class. That's Nyalie for sure. I really like his game. I think he's going to be an impact guy sooner than later. To me, I sort of get Cole Bishop vibes with him. Is that sort of player where you look at him, he's a mid three-star type of kid, but just you turn on the tape and you just see a darn good football player. So he's a guy that I really like. And then a couple other developmental guys that I think Utah fans should be really excited about. First of all, Preston Pitts. He's the guy that's been committed to Utah the longest in this class. He committed to Utah back in April and has stayed firmly committed to the program. This is, he's a kid that 6'4" frame, 215 pounds, good length, good athleticism. He has the frame. He has the game. I just think he needs a little bit of time to develop physically. But when I watch him, I see a guy like Kylie Fitz, right? That 6'4", long arm, long lever type of kid that can, collapse the pocket, can attack gaps, and get around the edge. So I'm really excited for him. He's kind of a hybrid along with PJ Taki, who's the most recent commit in the class. Both of those guys are those hybrid linebacker edge types of players. And, with Taki, again, another good frame at 6'2", 6'3", 215, 220 pounds. These are guys that can get off, get around the edge. They have got a great get off at the snap. And I think these are the types that Lewis Powell has done a tremendous job with. Pitts, obviously, he's going to come in as a linebacker, but I think these are two that I almost expect them to end up at edge for Utah over the course of their career. So really like this class. I think there's a lot of good pieces to the class. And when you talk about this 10-2 season, I think that's going to parlay into, greater success, not only in 2027, but getting into the transfer portal cycle, having a 10-win season, competing for a Big 12 title, being one of the top contenders in the Big 12, being in the playoff conversation for the duration of the season for Utah. Those are things that are going to help them as they get into the offseason, as they start to build momentum in the 2027 class. As we get into the month of January and the transfer portal window opens up, Utah's going to have a really good idea of players that they're going to target and who to go after and who to make moves on. So I think really interested to see how this class, the rest of this class, comes together, given the fact that I think once we're done with the signing period, I think that's going to be it for the high school class. And then all of the focus turns to the transfer portal in building out the rest of the roster. So really, again, Utah deserves a lot of credit for building the class the way that they did. You have to hope that they're able to hang on to the Pula twins despite obviously what's going on with BYU and what they've done this season. But I think, again, there remains optimism for Utah to hang on to those two. And then again, just sticking with what you do best, your bread and butter. Defensive guys with promising developmental qualities, offensive line studs, a tremendous running back as well. And I think that's the formula for Utah. And so I think there's a decent chance that Utah adds another one to the class tomorrow, but we'll see. We'll see. But there is momentum building towards that as well. So I'll go ahead. I'll wrap this one up. I apologize for some of the technical issues. I know I had to switch up the mic, and it probably sounds different than as I'm finishing the podcast compared to how it started. It obviously looks different. If you're watching this on YouTube, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to put this on YouTube, but certainly on the podcast, I hope this has been a good listen. Please feel free to hit me up on the Twitters or whatever, with questions about the recruiting class and all that sort of stuff. We'll do a recap. We'll probably do a live show on Wednesday as well to kind of recap some things. So appreciate everybody, and we'll be back at it tomorrow.